Hi, my name's Danae. I'm an occupational therapist and an ADHD coach, and I share tools to make life easier. And today I want to talk about emotional regulation. This is a biggie if you have ADHD and if you don't, because everybody needs to regulate their emotions. Before I go really deep into how and why that's important, let's talk about what it actually is. When we're talking about regulating your emotions, it means you can experience a wide range of emotions without being totally carried away by them. And when you're carried away, you're no longer making choices. You're just reacting. With emotional regulation, you can experience big emotions and still be able to make choices, still be able to function. You're not getting carried away with the emotion. You're still experiencing it. Sometimes people think that somebody who doesn't react or is always calm is regulating emotionally, and they may or may not be. Somebody could be showing one thing and completely dysregulated and really not able to function, but you don't know because they're not maybe expressing anger or big reactions where we know, hey, they're dysregulated. So people can very often be totally shut down by big emotions, and we don't know. What we do know is that with ADHD, a lot of us struggle with emotional dysregulation, and we need tools to make that easier. So what happens though is a lot of times is we get tools from one place on what I think of as the emotional regulation pyramid, right? If you think about all the tools you could use to regulate emotionally, you can picture it in a pyramid. The bottom of that pyramid is what I consider body-based tools. There's inputs to your body, sensory inputs. They're things that calm you, but they don't really require a lot of thought or practice or skill. So like think of the example of holding a baby who's crying. We're going to give them body-based input. We can't talk to them about that they're really okay, they're safe. We need to communicate safety to their bodies by giving them input. We might rock them, we might pat them. We're giving them some input to help them regulate. One of my favorite tools in this category is sensory strategies. This is something that I would do a lot as an OT. And sensory strategies are doing just this. With the baby, we're talking about rocking or the patting. That is sensory input of vestibular movement and proprioceptive input. These can be very regulating to our nervous system. Both of those sounded very sciencey, a little technical, but proprioceptive input, which is one of my favorites, basically just input to your joints and your muscles. Your proprioceptive system, if you were to close your eyes and let's say point to your elbow, your proprioceptive system is giving your brain feedback about where this elbow is using your muscles and your joints input there. So this system's always giving our brain feedback, and it's a great system for regulating our nervous system. So what does that look like? Pushing, pulling, anything that's giving muscles and joints input. It looks kind of like exercise, but it's not. We don't want to think about it as exercise because exercise has a lot of barriers to it. We have a lot of expectations with exercise. We think we need 30 minutes to go to the gym and we need time to shower. It needs to fit in the day, and it's a big production for a lot of us. And that's not what this is. You can get proprioceptive input from 1 minute, 5 minutes, just a short amount of this input can be regulating, can bring your nervous system level down and bring you to the level where now I can think about things again. Now I'm not like in this reaction place. But if you want more information about specifics with sensory strategies, I have a free 5-day training that comes through emails and it's video based. And you can sign up for that below if you want to dig a little deeper on sensory strategies. Another strategy that falls in this body-based category is the diving reflex. With this reflex, you want to check and make sure this is okay. Check with your medical professional to make sure this is okay for you to use for regulation. But if you take a bowl of ice water, you dip your face into that water, you trigger what's called a diving reflex. That reflex will lower your heart rate. It's kind of like tricking a switch in your nervous system. You have a branch of your nervous system that's more related to fight, flight, this kind of dealing with threats, right? And you have a portion of your nervous system that's more focused on digestion and rest, some of these body processes. And so you're forcing your nervous system to be like, hey, we're chill, we're good, just by lowering that heart rate from body level up. So this is another body-based strategy. You don't really need a lot of practice to do this. Now, the middle of the pyramid is a sticky place. In this category, you have things I would still consider body-based, but usually these strategies have a little bit of friction for people with ADHD because they're not simple body-based. Maybe they have a little skill, a little practice involved. They're not something you can use like immediately. You need a little practice. So mindfulness meditation is one of those. Breathing strategies is one of those. Both of those things, mindfulness and breathing, tends to really turn off people with ADHD, myself included. And I know before I did much of this, mindfulness, I was like, I am not a mindful person. I can't do this. I'm really frustrated, annoyed. So I didn't think I could do mindfulness, but I had to make some tweaks to make mindfulness accessible for me. And one of them was doing more action-based mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't have to be like sitting on a meditation cushion and being perfectly still. You can mindfully walk. You can mindfully wash dishes. You can mindfully eat a meal. And that was an easier way for me to use that as a tool than just sitting and being still. Also, like adjusting my expectations. If you are practicing mindfulness, you're not going to be good at it at first. It's just not something that I think we're inherently good at. But when, not if, when your mind kind of drifts off to something else, you just gently bring it back to the physical noticing of what you're doing, the physical experience. That's it. Mindfulness can be pretty simple. And the research on mindfulness shows us that it has a pretty big nervous system regulation impact. So it's a good one to practice if you're going to practice one of these middle of the pyramid tools. Another one is breathing. Um, I, I know a lot of people, myself included, that just kind of get annoyed with breathing. I don't know, with focusing on breathing. I don't know if it's just a little slow, a little frustrating for some reason, but another tip of maybe making that a bit easier to deal with is pairing a sensory input with breathing. So just working on counting breaths in and out or holding breaths a certain long time may not be engaging, but maybe if you're adding another sensory input like tracing something or watching something, it can make it a little bit more accessible. When I used to work with kids and we wanted to work on breathing, I would put a stuffed animal on their stomachs and we would work on lifting up the animal and lowering the animal, because sometimes just that body connection is a little trickier. So finding ways to do some of these middle of the pyramid strategies in ways that fit you is important. Now, the top of the pyramid is thought-based strategies. This is usually what you're going to work on with a therapist, like a traditional therapist. So you're going to look at cognitive behavioral therapy, challenging your thoughts, being flexible about your thoughts, assertiveness training, or communication tools. Like these are all things that are very thought-based that can help with our regulation, our emotional regulation. Being able to reframe a thought, being able to look at it from a different perspective, be very helpful. Being able to experience emotion and actually name it in a specific way can help really tame that emotion, calm that emotion down. So thought-based tools are another strategy, but when you're looking at what's immediately accessible to you, if you've not practiced these, they're the most complicated. They're the hardest to learn. They take the most practice. The bottom of the pyramid, you can do immediately, really no practice at all. That middle is somewhere in between. The top can be challenging. You need all levels of the pyramid. You might already kind of intuitively know why, but let's just have an example. Let's say somebody cuts me off in traffic, right? And I feel like I'm going to explode. Like I just want to react. I am super elevated. Maybe I had a tough day all day and I am way, not even close to decision-making, thinking, logic brain. I'm just like in pure like monkey mind. Like I want to get out of my car and like attack. At that point, thinking about the situation and challenging my thoughts about, okay, maybe this is somebody who's rushing to the hospital or may not be available to me, because when you're really dysregulated, you're no longer in this logical thinking place. You're in a reaction place. So a body-based strategy could be really helpful if I'm so upset that I can't really think well. So maybe I've got like a stress ball and I start grabbing it to get some of that proprioceptive input or some kind of strategy. In the car is a little tricky, but there's things you can do that's giving me input. Maybe I do some breathing. I do something to bring my nervous system level down. The trick is, if I'm still thinking thoughts about the situation that are triggering me, I'm going to jump right back up and be dysregulated again. You know this, right? You've been in an argument and you might be arguing in your head an hour, a day, a week later, and you're just as angry in that head argument as you were, maybe even more so, as you were a month ago. So our thoughts can be super dysregulating. So even though we can get our nervous system level at this calmer decision-making place, it's probably not going to stay in that place if we have thoughts that are kind of elevating us again. Ooh, you can't really access the thought if you're too dysregulated. So starting with the body base makes sense. But if you're not working on those thought strategies, you're going to probably continue to get dysregulated. We need all of these tools. Some take more practice than the other, but they're all really worthwhile. They're probably one of the most important strategies and tools that you can develop as a human, really. Because if you look around, you can see that people aren't really good at this. And not just people with ADHD, people in general really struggle with regulating their emotions. It's definitely a challenge, and learning tools for doing this is so important. It's important for you to be making decisions about your life instead of just reactions. It's important for your kids to have it modeled if you have children. It's important for your relationships. So this is something that is worth working on, tricky to work on. But if you found that this has been hard for you in the past, it could be because there's just one area of the pyramid that you were focused in on, and we need it all. So thanks for joining me, and good luck as you work on strengthening your skills all along this pyramid.